It's 9:30 here on the Kiwi.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, it's Janine Young with Wammo on Kiwi.
Well, it's not though. You see, I was hoping that if I had myself a little bit more organised, I could have found the old intro for Bianca Nogrady this morning. Good morning, Bianca.
Good morning, Wammo.
Filling in for Janine Young.
I know, back in the saddle.
Yeah. Well, gosh, it's been a while up there in the Blue Mountains.
Yep. It's still blue, still mountainous. Those things haven't changed, at least.
And life's still good.
Life is still excellent. Yes, it's accompanied by little Nina, who's now 8.5 months, and doesn't look like she will ever sleep through the night. But it's all part of the fun.
Well, a belated congratulations on air.
Thank you very much.
That's fantastic news. And you're still writing science. You're freelancing there at home.
I am. I've actually just written a book, which I know, surprisingly, motherhood and book authorship.
What's the book about?
It's about innovation and sustainability, which it'll be out. It's called The Sixth Wave, and it will be out in April next year.
Will people be able to find that online?
It will be online, yes, and hopefully in a good bookstore near you.
Oh, that's awesome. Innovation and sustainability.
I know, that's a very, very shorthand way of trying to explain a very large book, but
doubt.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun. Bit of a challenge writing it with the baby, but yeah, life's supposed to be challenging, I guess.
Well, good on you. Well, we've got a couple of great topics today.
We have indeed.
The first up are some major changes to the psychiatry textbooks.
I know. Psychiatrists, who are normally a fairly staid bunch, are all in a bit of a lather at the moment, and this is because the Bible of Psychiatry, which is shorthand is called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, is in the process of being revised. We're getting a new edition, the 5th edition. And unfortunately, as with a lot of things in psychiatry, this is stirring up some serious controversy. The biggest concern is that the direction being taken could actually see tens of millions of additional people fitting the criteria for mental illness, which, on the surface may not necessarily be a bad thing if these people actually do need treatment, but the problem is that treatment itself can carry some quite significant side effects, and because mental illness is such a grey area, we have to tread fairly carefully.
Yeah.
But basically, the DSM started life back in 1952, and it was used by the US military to decide whether recruits were actually fit for combat, but it's now grown to become this absolutely massive book that's the main diagnostic tool for psychiatrists. And, the thing with psychiatry is it's quite different to a lot of other areas of medicine in the sense that, with infectious disease, you've either got a bug or you don't. Whereas with psychiatry, there's a lot of grey areas, a lot of sliding scales. It can be quite subjective. And so, for example...
I was going to say, I always get this feeling that they always want to put a label on something.
Well, exactly, and this is where one of the difficulties lies. There's all these checklists of symptoms, but for example, with schizophrenia, there are 114 different combinations of symptoms that can lead to a diagnosis of schizophrenia, and even these don't cover all of the people with the disease. But one proposal that they're actually making in this new category, in this new book, is to create new categories that actually capture milder, earlier forms of diseases such as schizophrenia. Again, it sounds like a good thing, but, because the idea being that you catch someone before they have a psychotic episode, before they have their first psychotic episode, theoretically you can actually use drugs to stop the disease from progressing. But how do we know that we're not just medicalising what might be normal behaviour? Because these categories are also in areas like depression. How do you know when someone, being down for an extended period of time becomes depression, what is normal and what is actually a disease that needs to be treated?
Because isn't that the issue, that once they label something, they can then prescribe something for it?
Well, exactly, and one of the many accusations flying around associated with this revision is that, that there's too much influence from the pharmaceutical industry in the sense that, authors that are on the revision panel having grants from the pharmaceutical industry, and there are sort of careful systems in place to actually reduce the risk of that happening, but it can be quite difficult to know who's actually acting on with what interests at heart. But some of the other things that they're looking is to create a diagnosis of something called hebephilia, and this is basically adults who are sexually fixated on teenagers who are just hitting puberty, and it's different from pedophilia, which is adults who are fixated on prepubescent children. Now,
I didn't know there was a distinction. I thought anyone under the age of 16
is a no-go area. Exactly. Yeah. Well, this is the issues. There is a distinction, at least when it comes to psychiatry, or they're trying to create one. Now, the controversy with this is that in the US, 20 states have recently passed laws so that if a sex offender is actually deemed to be a sexual predator, in the sense that of actually having a mental illness that predisposes them or makes them much more likely to reoffend, they can actually be detained indefinitely in a hospital even after they've completed the term of their sentence.
Right.
So it could lead to a lot of people being detained for a very, very long time. So you don't want to be making that decision lightly.
Interesting. So there are other psychiatrists out there who want to debate this and who don't want to see some of these changes go through. So there is, within the practice, there are people who are arguing this? Or?
Well, there are, and in fact some of the most vocal critics of this new version are actually the two authors of the previous version. And, they've been, they've been, I guess, writing a lot of very angry letters trying to point out some of the errors of the process that this is going through. And they're accusing, obviously, that there's influence of the pharmaceutical industry. But then the counter-accusation is that these two, or at least one of them, the royalties payments that they get from the previous editions of this manual apparently will cease when the new edition is published. And so the accusations flying back are that they've got their own financial interest at stake. So, it is quite serious in the sense of the implications for a lot of people who might fit into those borderline categories, or who might be, in jail for naughty things that might sort of see their sentence suspended out for the rest of their life. So these aren't decisions to be taken lightly, and particularly when there's sort of financial accusations being thrown around, it does get a little bit hairy.
Bianca, finally, a story that the New Scientist has just come up with, a pet showdown. What is best, cats or dogs?
I was very pleased to see the result of this, because I am a dog person. I'm cat sitting at the moment, and the cat completely ignores me, absolutely hates me. Yeah, there's a long-running argument between cat people and dog people about which pet is best. So New Scientist has come up with the definitive answer that dogs are better.
How did they come up with this?
Well, they looked at a whole range of things. They looked at things like brains, size, domestication, who bonds better with humans, who understands more. And cats do come up well on, for example, brains. Even though dogs have slightly bigger brains, cats actually have double the number of neurons in the cortex, so that's a measure of processing power. But on the other hand, dogs became man's best friend a heck of a lot earlier than cats became man's kind of semi-friend, if you'll feed me nicely, that kind of thing.
Cats owned man.
Yes, cat-owned man. Dogs have a much better vocalization range. They can actually communicate a lot more. Their senses aren't quite as good as cats. Cats can actually smell better. They can see better in lower light. They have a much bigger auditory range. Dogs are far, far worse for the planet, unfortunately, in terms of the area of land required to keep a dog fed is actually much bigger than the area of land required to feed a cat.
Yeah.
But dogs are extremely useful. I mean, a dog can sniff out bombs, they can sniff out cancer, they can rescue people, they can help you learn, they're good for your health. They might even be able to predict earthquakes, whereas what can a cat do?
But the average mutt can't do any of those things.
Oh, well, the average mog, yes. They can kind of sit, give you disdainful looks, wash, leave fur balls around the place, scratch the heck out of the sofa.
Throw up on the bed.
And not that I'm biased here, of course. This is a very very objective scientific assessment. But the end score was that dogs are marginally better than the cats by 1 point.
I do like cats because you can go away for the day and leave them. They don't need constant attention.
That's true. But that constant attention, it's love. It's good for you, actually. It keeps you fit because the dog's constantly saying, "I want to go out for a walk. I want to go out for a walk," and that walking is very, very good for you.
Now some say young couples get dogs as like trainer wheels for babies. Do you agree? Are they decent?
Well, actually, it's interesting because dogs are very similar to babies in some ways in terms of how they cope when they're in a strange situation. They did an experiment where they take the dog to a strange place, like a laboratory, and then the owner leaves, and then the owner comes back, and they see their response. And dogs respond very much like a baby in that when the owner's there, they're quite happy, they'll explore their strange environment, but when the owner goes away, they get quite distressed. They'll cope for a while, but then when the owner comes back, they're like, oh, you're back, I love you, I love you, I love you. Cats they couldn't even do the experiment. Cats were just so distressed at being in a strange environment, just freaked out, dropped the bundle, so we don't know. But dogs definitely better at bonding with humans.
I'll stick with cats at this stage.
Oh, no.
Thanks very much. Cheers for that.
No worries at all.
Lovely to talk once again. Hope we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Bianca Nogrady, our New Scientist correspondent there. Those stories you'll find in New Scientist magazine coming out next